Now I'd like to introduce a person who hasn't been on our show before, Burr Stewart. Burr Stewart, I'm happy to say, attended the Tacoma Narrow Gauge Convention and took a great video of that convention and is here this evening to tell us a little bit about what he saw and what he experienced and to show his video. So Burr, thanks so much for doing this. We really do appreciate it.
Well, thanks. I'm a member of a 13-person committee which organized this year's National Narrow Gauge Convention in Seattle. It was actually in Tacoma, Washington, which is like St. Paul and Minneapolis kind of thing. But if you're not familiar with it, this is a convention that happens every year in some city where people who want to put on the convention get together and organize a bid to host it. So next year the convention will be in Denver at this time, and I can't remember the following years, but it'll come up in the video. So we had a whole bunch of model railroaders here, about I think 400 to 500 that registered, which is pretty amazing considering the COVID situation and the expense of air travel. And I like to joke that Seattle is the only city in the United States that's where the next nearest city is at least 800 miles away. And that, that would be San Francisco, followed by Salt Lake or something. So it's very different from the East Coast where you can just get in a car and go to a different city. Anyway, I digress. At the end of the, I've been doing a lot of YouTube videos on my layout, so I've gotten really comfortable with making videos. And at the end of in the middle of the convention, I thought I should just take some shots of the convention and put it together in a video. So somehow this is what Phil was there, and I think, and he may have even come to my layout.
He was there every minute. He was there every minute.
I think he might have even been to my layout. But anyway, he suggested that we show the video that I put together. It's about 17 minutes. And I'd like to suggest if you have a barf bag handy that you might use on an airplane, you might need it for watching this video, because I kind of rush around the room and I sped up the video so I could cram it all into 17 minutes, because as you know, a 4-day convention, and it's hard to cram that into 17 minutes. So I apologize for the craziness of this video. And someone has pointed out to me it would have been a lot better to show the contest entrance as a series of slides rather than what I did, which was to run around the room and just show it with my video. So with all that said, I think you can go ahead and roll it. If anybody has questions.
Did you miss the National Narrow Gauge Convention in Tacoma, Washington in 2022 over Labor Day weekend? Or did you attend it and just want to relive it? If so, this video is for you. This is Burr Stewart, and join me for a quick overview of all the things that went on, or at least some of the things that went on during the convention. For starters, we were welcomed at the registration desk by Janice and Mary Duplex. We'll see more of their layout in a minute. Next, we were welcomed by the Hangman Creek modular layout, one of the most spectacular ON3 layouts in the country. I would show you more video of this, but we don't have time. And they were at the exhibition hall selling their videos as well as kits for some of the wonderful features on this diorama.
I'm here from the vendor room. Are you a vendor?
Speaking of the vendor hall, Greg Wright and his volunteers did a great job of keeping people out of the hall until it opened at 6 p.m. on the first day. Hi, Dennis.
Welcome to the contest room. You can display models that you have handcrafted, photographs that you've taken. We have some wonderful models. If you need a form to fill out.
As you can see in here, Dennis Terpstra did a wonderful job of shepherding the entire contest room operation.
The models are going to be judged, and it's possible that you could win a plaque for first, second, or third place. And this is an exciting room. Each of these models is hand-built.
I'll show you a couple of photos of the winners in a minute, but check the next issue of the Narrow Gauge and Short Line Gazette for full photographs of all the
We
winners.
have larger ones. The buildings.
This is a beautiful large-scale model.
You have to take notice of this garage. It is just outstanding how this is all put together.
Voters agreed with him, and this was one of the award winners. Dennis and I were both wowed by all of these contest models. I don't have time to show them to you in detail, but you can see the variety and wonderful qualities of these entries. The vendor room, also called the exhibition hall, by me anyway, was a lot of fun too, as well as expensive if you didn't keep track of what you were getting engrossed in. I think I got out of there for under $1,000. I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing. A lot of wonderful sales of estates and vendors, new vendors, old vendors. And there were 4 modular layouts here as well that were really fun to watch, and I even got to operate on one of them. That was this Moose Creek ON30 layout, quite nice and long setup, a typical Northwest logging line. And just as I was taking this video, along comes a train. How about that? In case you're feeling seasick from watching this video, I've sped most of it up at least 2 times for the rest of the video, so it goes by pretty fast. I don't have time to do much other than rush you around these modular layouts, but they were really good, all 4 of them. Remember, this is twice the speed the actual engine was going. A nice camper scene. Every logging railroad needs a woodpile. A water tank and a sawmill.
Yeah, and about 70 people. Yeah. But everybody just coming off the street and go right in the garage.
And then they wait their turn.
Well, Lynn was going in and out of the house.
Very nice.
And we may have to rearrange the...
Well, back on the showroom floor, we have a major tool vendor selling me and other people all kinds of tools we need badly.
I'll be right back there.
PBL, of course, was here in force. And this might be a good time to thank all of the vendors who participated in this year's show. We had both ESU and Tsunami soundtracks, San Juan with their new tank cars, and many others, too numerous to mention, but we appreciate every single one of you. As an HON3 modeler, I thought this was clever to put a coupler on the end of a module. And I thought I'd give you a nice aerial view of this long layout, which is called the Palisades.
Actually, it's that module.
I think
that was
this
called
is
the
a famous
Palisades.
Alpine turntable inside this roundhouse. And look at this. Once again, we lucked out with the train. Again, remember, in real life, the locomotive was going half this speed. Quintessential Colorado narrow gauge mountain railroading. And now we see the modular layout called the Monson Railroad,
Monson and
based on the
Sheepscot, I think it is.
2-foot narrow gauge lines in Maine. I was particularly fascinated by their open pit mine and came back to take pictures of it from several angles. Beautiful modeling. Here's an under-track cattle crossing. This particular scene here is very useful to understand the difference between standard gauge tracks that we have here and the narrow gauge over on the left. You can see how much narrower they are, the distance between the rails. This is 2-foot gauge. Well, back in the hotel, we had many presentations called clinics going on, and we just got a few pictures of some of our clinicians giving presentations to the attendees. We thank you all very much for these presentations. Well, if all that wasn't enough, we had over 30 layouts that were open to visitors during the 4 days of the convention. And I can't possibly do justice to all of the work that went into these layouts and how much fun people had visiting them, but I'll just show you a few clips from them. This is Dale Kreitzer's famous RGS layout, which had more than 200 visitors during the 4 days of the convention. And here we have a Heisler plugging away on Russ Segner's SN3 layout. Not to be outdone in the super detail arena, Tyler Whitcomb's N-scale layout was near the convention and was a marvel for everyone who saw it.
Tyler built this in just the last 6
Just
years.
look at those cows.
I think he was in Model Railroader magazine a couple months ago.
I'm not normally one to be speechless, but in this case all I can say is bravo. This is Pacific Northwest logging railroading at its finest. I can't say the same for my videography, but you just had to be there to see this. Back at Barry Dupler's HON3 layout, he showed us how he did force perspective with small trees in the back and big trees in the front,
that blocks the view from one to the other, and when you look at it, because of the tree
as well as a removable scenery piece
next to the small one, and so
that
force perspective.
separates two scenes from his layout.
So I was trying to do that on this part of the layout,
It was kind of scary to watch that.
the illusion of distance. And so if you look over here, if you take this shot here, you can see how it looks like it's in the distance.
Barry is fundamentally a structure modeler, and the sawmill and the dual gauge portion of his layout, in my opinion, rivals the one by Jim Vail that's currently on display in the Sacramento Model Railroad Museum. On the other side of Lake Washington, on my own HON3 Empire, copper ore was being hauled by a Blackstone K27 across the trestle that I built over 50 years ago. These elk seem to have gotten used to the passing of frequent trains and remain indifferent. But what I really want to show you is that in preparation for the convention, Robin Peel, who was the chairman of the convention, also took time to scratch build a model of the Tacoma oil transfer platform for my interchange between the narrow gauge and the standard gauge. I couldn't talk him into entering it into the model contest, but I just wanted you to see it. It's a really beautiful thing. You can see from this picture that I have 3 of San Juan Car Company's new HON3 Conoco tank cars in service. Beautiful models. One thing I learned recently is that these Conoco tank cars were used in gasoline service to supply fuel dealers in the towns on the narrow gauge line, whereas the Gramps cars were used in oil service back and forth between Chama and Alamosa. So they never would have run in a train together like this. So we'll change that up for the future. What better way to transition to standard gauge than a Rio Grande passenger train, followed by a beautiful refinery model built in the last 6 years by Chuck Lee, who was located near the convention and got visited by a number of people. This HO standard gauge layout has some very nice modeling of the pipeline industry, which Chuck works in. There's a welder on the pipe, and of course here's a pipe layer.
There he is.
After all the excitement,
May.
we ended the convention with an ice cream
Craig
social and
Symington.
got to
Hi, Steve.
meet up with old and new
Aaron
friends.
Murray, who's been helping with the tape.
And then, of course, the final awards and business meeting held on Sunday night. And as you can see, very well attended. Robin Peel emceed the meeting and started off with thanking everyone who was involved in putting the conference together, followed by the executive committee that organized the conference in Seattle, and then presented all of the awards with the help of Dennis Terpstra, who had been the contest room chair. I don't have time to present all the awards here, but I'll just give you the locomotive categories because, after all, model railroading is all about locomotives. And finally, the Best in Show award went to Brian Block for this amazing 1x1 foot diorama. Next was door prizes.
Next one is 175. 7211, 175.
Which was very exciting for those who won them, and nerve-wracking for the rest of us. And then there was the announcement of the future conventions. Next year will be Denver, followed by Pittsburgh in 2024, St. Louis in 25, and the Minneapolis area's bid for 26 was accepted by unanimous applause. And finally was the keynote address by Lynn Modiger on the restoration of the East Broadtop.
So essentially, East Broadtop, new beginnings. A group of people got together and basically swallowed the whole enchilada. So we got 30 miles of railroad and 6 steam locomotives.
This is a summary video, so I'll speed this up. This map shows the 30-mile extent of this ambitious project. And finally, Chairman Robin Peel closed the meeting and the entire 4-day conference on the premise that he had nothing more to say.
I don't have too much more to say, other than thank you for being here. It was a long struggle to get this going during the pandemic, and I really appreciate you all guys coming here as bad as everybody else. Travel safely. We'll see you in Denver next year.
And he received a very nice round of applause from the crowd.
We'll see you in Denver, and then in Pittsburgh, and then in St. Louis, and then in the Twin Cities. Thank you. Goodbye.
And with that, we all rushed off back to our merry lives. And as Robin said, we'll see you next year in Denver.
Well, Burr, I think you did a beautiful job. I really do appreciate you sharing it with us tonight. Does anybody have any questions for Burr?
I'd start out by saying Phil was going to throw up some of the actual slides of the winners while we're doing Q&A, so that can cycle on the
Okay.
screen there. Do we have a question? While we're waiting for a question, I'll just say the thing that we were the happiest about was that we still haven't heard about anyone catching COVID as a result of the convention, and we did a lot of work to try to prevent that. So we didn't have any sit-down meals, and a lot of us wore masks a lot of the time, and a number of the layout tour hosts had mask requirements, and there were no bus tours and so forth. It was, that was one of our biggest concerns, that it would just end up being a disaster for some of the people that came. But anyway, we haven't heard of any problems like that so far.
Yeah, so just a comment. So this was the best in show.
Yeah.
And this was a pretty amazing, this is a square foot model. It shows up later as the square foot winner, but it had just an amazing amount of both detail and just quality modeling in it. So just pretty amazing.
What scale was that done in?
It was O scale.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And this was a large scale engine.
Yeah, we had a question in the comments about the Mack logging truck, and I think that comes up too in your slides at some point.
Yeah, I hope so.
And another thing I heard the other day was that we've lost some very prominent and famous narrow gauge modelers here in the last few years. Paul Scholes and the guy who used to run Evergreen Scale Models, the founder, and several other people. And those were very much signature layouts for the Pacific Northwest, and those layouts are gone now. And we were very pleased that there were a number of new layouts that basically took their place, like that N-scale layout that I showed you of Tyler Whitcomb's. He's a young guy. he and his wife have a young child, and he lives in a small house with a basement that's just right for an N-scale layout, and that guy's modeling skills just don't quit. So anyway, we were
just
very happy. Yeah.
One comment on the last slide for you guys that, for those of you that are not kind of tuned into the narrow gauge community, it's a pretty amazing modeling community, even if you're not a narrow gauger, quite frankly, even if you go standard. So it's worth looking at the dates here, see if it's coming close to you, because if it's coming close enough that it's easy to get to, it'd be well worth stopping in it. Denver is obviously going to be great because it's Colorado, but Pittsburgh, I think, is also a great place to go to the Narrow Gauge Convention in 24. So it might be worth marking your calendar. Enough said.
Yeah, and we had, I think, over 50% of our layouts were standard gauge layouts that were on tour. So people were really in for a treat, even if they had no interest in narrow gauge per se.
Well, I think the interesting part about it is that this is a very loose leaf kind of operation. I mean, this is not an association. This is not a club. People get together in different cities and bid for the conventions, and it's all kind of voluntary. The group, like Burr was a member of out in Tacoma, they just get together and figure out who's going to do what, and they put a convention on. And that's how the Narrow Gauge Convention is so different, in my opinion, from all the other conventions around, because it's always different. I mean, you're never going to see a cookie cutter kind of situation at the Narrow Gauge Convention, because it's always different people that are in charge of figuring out what they want to do, how they want to do it, and when they want to do it. And I really think that's great that the hobby has that kind of volunteerism for that kind of a convention, Burr. So congratulations to you and your team.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. That's well said. And I was going to say to you, if you'd like to put on one of these conventions, there's a bid opportunity right there on that chart for what's the next one that we don't have decided yet. So get a few
27.
friends together and you can make a bid.
Well, Burr, thanks so very much for being here. And we're going to see Burr back early next year. We're going to see more of his layout and have him talk a little bit about what he does and how he does it and why he does it. And so, Burr, I look forward to that, and have a good weekend.
All right. Thanks, Jim.